Hello everyone, let's dive into another exercise to practice using the pen tool. You can find this exercise sheet on the X drive, although it should be saved to your desktop. Let's begin with the basics. I'm just zooming in using Command plus sign, and let's try an open path shape. So I really enjoy this exercise sheet because what we have here in the blue are examples of what our tracing should look like. And all these little white dots, we can even see that they are anchors, showing you how many times you should be clicking to set your anchors. So let's start by making sure that we are on the right layer. With this file, all layers are locked, so we just need to make sure that we are on the free trace layer. And of course we can't select it yet because we haven't started drawing. However, it is highlighted, so anything we do will go on that layer. So we will take our pen tool. Again, use an interesting color. Click your stroke. Double click to open up the color picker. I'm going to choose a nice bright color, okay. And I will stick with 1 point for my stroke. However, you can make it larger if you want. Alrighty. So now I'm going to find the corner, click to make my anchor. Straight line, click to make my next one, and click for the end. Now if you remember, the way that we can stop the pen tool from trying to continue to draw is to simply swap the tool. So we are going to hit V. You can see that V has now clicked our main selection tool. Now we didn't explore this yet, but our selection tool actually allows us to move the lines that we just drew. What I've also just noticed is that our fill is set to white, but we want it to be none right now. Oh, this little double arrow here allows you to swap the settings between the fill and the stroke, so I'm just going to click it back to set it to normal. And now let's move on to our pentagon here. Remember, we click for every time we want to anchor. This one's pretty easy. It's almost snapping to where it's supposed to be. And now we've closed the shape, so the pen tool isn't going to try to draw anymore. Now let's go over to the triangle. And we can tell that we are about to close the shape when you see that circle show up and the word intersect near the cursor. Good, now the shape is closed. Alright, now on to curves, which we explored with yesterday, with our exercises yesterday. Now, what we are going to do is try to follow these as best as possible. So for this first single curve exercise, remember yesterday when we were doing curves, we had handles show up. And what this diagram is showing is where the handles should be in relation to our 2 points for us to make the curve. So for this one, normally we simply click once for an anchor, go to our second point, click and hold and try to make the curve. However, we can see that it's just not quite going to get there. So I'm going to hit Command Z and undo what I've just done. And I'm going to undo my anchor as well. And this time, when we're laying our anchor, we're going to click and we're going to drag. And I want to make sure that the top anchor goes all the way up to that dotted line. I'm going to hold the Shift key to make sure that I'm able to pull it straight. And I'm going to release. And now I'm going to click off of my anchor point. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do that the other way. Holding Shift, release, click the anchor here, and now what we're getting is a bit of an S curve, which isn't what we want either, so we're going to turn this way around. Instead of pulling the anchor down, we are going to pull the anchor straight up. There we go. Now we have the curve that we want. Now we're going to click. Now we're going to pull this anchor down, have the top dot reach the dotted line, hold shift to keep a straight line, and there we go. Nearly perfectly matched. Remember to hit V to click off of your tool. Now on to the next one. Selecting our pen tool again. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Click our anchor and we are going to drag all the way up, holding shift to make sure that we are straight. Set our next point, click and drag. And now let's see if the pen tool can actually guess what we're doing. And it can. Beautiful. Click and drag. Then we're going to click off of our tool by hitting V. Wonderful. So that was actually done in 3 anchors. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to try a 45-degree curve. If we take a look up here, our anchor points, instead of being vertical like they were over here, our handles are going to be on a 45-degree angle. So let's see if we can replicate this. I'm going to click P for my pen tool. This time I'm going to click and drag in this direction. And now let's see if this will work. If we go all the way to the anchor on the far right, click holding shift, because remember that shift lets us keep the 45-degree angles. If I keep stretching all the way to the line, we don't quite get the perfect curve, and I know why. Because while this one, the current handles and anchor that we're working with are a perfect 45-degree angle, the previous one was not because I did not hold shift. So I'm going to let go of my mouse before I let go of shift. And now we're actually going to fix this handle. So again, click V to release. And now we're going to use a tool that we haven't used before, and it's the direct selection tool. It's the white arrow. And this will actually allow us to adjust the handles. So I'm going to click on this handle, and I'm going to hit 45. I'm going to hold shift to make sure that it hits a 45-degree angle. And we can see that now, being on the 45-degree angle, it can match up perfectly. So lay it on the line, release your click before you release shift, and there we go. We have a perfect trace. Wonderful. Alright, so we've had some good practice with curves. Now on to something more challenging. This is known as breaking paths. So what we are going to do is we're going to try to replicate this as best as we can, and we see that there are 1, 2, 3, there's only 4 anchors. But we're seeing something different with the handles here, so let's see if we can figure it out. Going to zoom in, and I'm going to stop, or rather start at this top point here. And again, when we see handles showing up, that means that we need to click and drag. So as opposed to simply clicking once, oh, I'm sorry, we need our pen tool. As opposed to simply clicking once and then trying to draw, we're going to undo that, and we are going to click and drag and hold shift until the anchor's handles reach these faint lines here. Then we're going to unclick. Good, and now we're going to bring the curve down to this line, click and drag to have it match the curve. And if I hold shift again, it's going to set my handle right, and I can see that the top ball there is going to connect with the dotted line. Good. Now here's where things get challenging. we are going to bring our next anchor all the way down to this next point, and we are going to pull our anchor downwards and leave it like that for the moment. Now remember that if the pen tool is not curving as you like, we click off of the anchor, and that will allow us to continue setting anchors without any interruptions. I'm going to set my anchor. I'm going to, I'm going to keep the point facing upwards, hold shift, and mark it there. And now let's see if we can complete the curve at the top here. See, the circle means I'm going to connect. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to hold shift to make sure that I stay steady, and releasing my mouse. Now here's where things get challenging. We can see that this is clearly off, so what we are going to do is we're going to use our direct selection tool, and we are going to make some adjustments. So if you look closely, the handle for this point is right here, so I'm going to click and drag it until it looks like the one in the image. We got a straight handle for the third line. I'm going to leave it like that. Now I'm going to go over here and try to fix this handle. I'm going to pull it down until it looks like this area over here. I'm going to pull it down, down, down. Hold shift if I want, just to make sure. And there we go, we've matched that side. Now let's see what we can do about this side. I'm going to click the handle here. I'm going to hold down shift, and I'm going to bring the curve here. And now what we need is the handle that's on the left over here, but right now we can't see it. So while this white tool can grab points, it can also grab the actual line. So I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to try to pull it over. And now we can see, you see over on the right how the handle has now appeared? So I've kind of just scared it out of hiding. So I'm going to release, even though I've messed it up a little bit. I'm going to take this handle, I'm going to match it to the image that we have on the left. Good, so now we have the point, and now we can go back and fix this handle. Pull it down here, and there we have it. We can see now that we have matched it pretty perfectly. And now you are invited to test it out on this shape without the guidelines. Of course, still look at it, but see how well you can do without it. And then the rest of the tutorial is tracing more complex shapes. So I'll just start the squirrel. So I'll go over here. A bit too much. There we are. So again, we always want to try to trace in as few points as possible. Let's see if I can just do part of the tail. So remember to choose your pen tool. I'm going to start at the tip of the tail. And remember to try to not do too much of the curve at once. If I were to try to go all the way across here, it would be nearly impossible. Well, actually, it would be impossible because the curves are just not allowed that way. If you look at the top handle opposite of my mouse right now, the highest point of the curve is always reaching towards that handle, so this is just not going to work for us. So I'm going to Command Z what I did there, and I'm going to start smaller. I'll start over here, and I'll pull to try to make that curve pretty close. Probably actually could have done a little bit of a smaller area. I'm going to click off my anchor. Perhaps do this part of the curve now. And no, the pen tool's not doing what we want, so we're going to click off the anchor again. try to trace this next part of the curve. And now let's try to get this long stretch here. No, there's too much of a direction change, so it's not going to work. We're going to hit Command Z. We'll just continue with a bit of a straight path here, and then we can fit a bit of a slope here. Excellent. I'm just going to click off by clicking V on the keyboard, and I want to zoom in for a moment just to show you all a trick. So what we have here at the top, remember that you can use your white arrow, your direct selection tool, to try to adjust the path to suit your needs. However, this doesn't always work. But if I zoom in, and the fact that it's not perfect isn't what's bothering me right now, it's this little point here. So if you go over here to your shaper tool, and if you right click, find the smooth tool. And with this tool, what you're going to do is just very roughly trace over the area that's bothering you. And you can see that it's going to automatically add more points to smooth out the area. Now we don't have that harsh point. So now with the rest of your time, to the best of your ability, I want you to trace the squirrel, then come down here and trace the letter as well. And I will have you all submit this on Schoology to be reviewed. This is formal practice for you guys. Don't get frustrated, breathe through it. Look up additional videos on YouTube if you like. I'm always around for help. Just be patient and the skill will come.